Okay. Hello, and welcome to the podcast, Tapping In, where we tap into the wisdom and experience of successful leaders. I'm your host, Gwen Brain, and we are going to be sharing all kinds of wonderful things in today's program. A little bit about me. I'm passionate about mental health. I'm passionate about ancient philosophy, and I love seeing all of that and how it works with modern science and helping people today. So as we move forward, I'm going to be hosting various people, and today we're speaking with Justin Reinert. So Justin, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, thank you for having me on, Gwen. My name is Justin Reinert. I am the founder and principal of Performance Accelerated Learning. We help leaders build high-performing organizations where everyone belongs. I also work part-time for an organization called Brain Aware Training, which is led by Dr. Britt Andriata, who has authored 4 books on the brain science of success. In 2022, I authored my first book titled Creating Belonging, a practical guide to accelerate belonging in organizations and communities, and have done a lot of speaking on that book. So that's kind of who I am today in my professional life, at least.
Awesome. That's wonderful. So I want us to explore a little bit of your journey. Like I said, we're tapping into your wisdom as a successful leader in the areas that you excel in, such as working with organizations and helping them with connecting everybody and including everybody and optimizing their outcome, right? So in thinking back on your career, what would you say your biggest wins were? And what made them a
Oh, wow.
yeah.
I mean, there's so many that I can think about, and I was reflecting on this as I was preparing. And so I think, I'm going to go back in the archives and share a little bit of my background and tie it into this. So,
Perfect.
I started my career in sales and then quickly went into a sales training role and then leadership development, all of that with global banking giant HSBC. They were actually bigger back then. And I remember when I was growing up in that organization, we always placed in training magazines, training top 125. And so early in my career, I just remember setting a goal that someday I'm going to lead a team, I'm going to lead an organization that places in training magazines, training top 125. I think they're now called the Apex Awards.
Mhm.
And so fast forward just a couple of years, and I was working for a small software company called Big Machines. And I was the training team and then built out the training team and ultimately was leading human resources for the organization. And about halfway through that journey, I decided, I had set this goal to be a training magazine award winner. And so let's start applying, even though, we may not win, but let's kind of figure this out. And it was this kind of bittersweet experience because at the end of 2013, it was announced that Oracle was buying Big Machines, and so we were being merged into that large company of Oracle. And in the flurry of all this activity, it was a very busy time going through that acquisition. I received notification that we had placed in Training Magazine's top 125. And so when I got to Oracle, I asked, we had gone through our legal entity combination. So now I was officially an Oracle employee and not even in the training world. I was just sitting in HR at the time. And so I asked my boss, I'm like, hey, this is, an award that I won with the prior organization. And it really doesn't mean a lot at this point, but I would really love to go and accept this award. And so she said, you know what? Absolutely, we'll pay your expenses to go because you earned it. And so I went and accepted that award in San Diego back in that kind of winter of 2014 and celebrated so much because, and I couldn't believe at that, I felt like I was still fairly early in my career to have made that achievement. And so that's when I think about biggest wins, that's one of those wins um, that I reflect on fondly. And it was great then to later in my career continue on, go to another organization, and build a team and programs that went on to place again in the Training Magazine Awards 3 years in a row, while I was with that organization. So yeah, that's one of my wins.
That's fantastic. That's fantastic. So, what I heard from that is that you had this goal and it was a very specific goal. And having specific goals, I have found, have been really helpful. It's almost like you're putting it out into the universe, but you're also taking action to get there, right? Like you just didn't throw it out there and say, I want this someday. You were actually doing things all along the way to make it happen. So
Yeah.
that's pretty
Yeah.
cool.
You know what though? I also find that even when we set goals with intention, but we don't necessarily have steps to get there, I think sometimes the world makes it work. Like we
Right.
just set that in our heads
Mm-hmm.
and it happens. Because I think or this is not necessarily work related. I mean, work needed to happen to
Okay.
get me
Oh,
there. So
yeah.
I just remember, so very young Justin, one of my first trips to Chicago. I grew up in Iowa, lived in Iowa. And so I was, I don't know, maybe 20, 21, and was visiting Chicago. And I remember coming downtown and looking up at all the high rises on the lake and thinking, man, someday I want to live in one of those high rises. And that's what success is. Like, I will be successful when I live in one of those high rises. And so I didn't really do a lot beyond that to try to achieve this. In fact, a number of years later, then I was working with a company that I took a promotion, which moved me to Chicago. And so I literally had forgotten this thing other than like, high rises on the lake. This has got to be it. And so then as I was looking for apartments, I found an apartment in a high rise on the lake. It's actually much more attainable than one might think. And so I moved in and I was there for a month and I was standing looking out over Belmont Harbor one morning and it clicked and I was like, holy crap, I did it. I'm here. And I look around me and it was actually a really crappy apartment. Like it had never been remodeled since the 50s. Like, but I did it. I was in that high rise on the lake. And so I think sometimes when we set intentions like that, they just happen,
Yeah.
with some kind of magic. I'm not saying that always happens, but
Yeah.
there's something we do to achieve those things.
There's true. And I think a lot of it has to do with neuroscience as well. And there's a particular system in our brain called the reticular activation system that recognizes things. So, for instance, if you buy a black SUV and then suddenly you drive out of the car lot and you see black SUVs everywhere, like because your
Mhm.
reticular activation system recognizes that, right? And
Mhm.
then you start moving in that direction. So I think that happens with things that we say to ourselves. And then
Mhm.
automatically our brain starts moving in that direction. And suddenly
Mhm.
we find ourselves there and we don't think we've done anything, but that's how setting that intention works, right? And so, yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. So I love that. I love that you have these almost a spiritual journey alongside your very active um, professional journey, right?
Yes, yes. The next one that I'm working on, I'm just reflecting back to, I've told that story so many times, and then, it turns into what's our next goal? And I remember, I can't even remember the people I was with, but I said, we someday we're gonna fly somewhere on our private jet. So I don't know. I'm destined for a private jet moment at some
There
point
you
in
go.
time. I haven't made it there yet.
All right. Well, we'll touch base with you in 10 years and see if you're on a private jet. That'd be awesome. Yeah. So
Yes.
I know that there's always challenges when people are moving forward in their business and succeeding in life. What do you think one of your greatest challenges has been? And how did you see yourself maybe on the backside? How do you see yourself having worked through that?
Yeah. I was reflecting on this, and um, there was when I was reflecting and thinking about my greatest challenges, there's a bit of you know meta cognition around this. Like, I don't see a lot of challenges, right? When I reflect, I can think about challenging times, but I also made it through them. So I'm trying to think about, what made it that challenging. And part of it is thinking about what's in my control, right?
Mhm.
And so, was it challenging because somebody else was an a-hole? Yes, but I can't control that. So, I made it through whatever. But I do think, being very vulnerable, I think one of the most challenging times I've gone through is right now in my business. And so how it is on the, after the challenge, you'll have to check in later. But I think that, it's a challenging business environment right now, especially as a solopreneur and, in this realm of talent development, when so many organizations are not investing in their people in the ways that they have in the past. And so, I'll say the positive side of it is that I've been at it now for over a year and a half.
Mhm.
And not everyone who goes out on their own can say that they have made it that long. And so, and I don't see myself closing up shop anytime soon, but I feel confident that I'll make it through the end of this year and go into next year. So, there's some success in that, but I do think it's challenging. And what's the most challenging about it is keeping my head on straight.
Right.
I've
Absolutely.
always, yeah, I've always, I've always had a very positive demeanor generally in my approach to work and my approach to challenges and the way that I do things. And when you're kind of on your own, it's really easy to get into these spirals of nothing I do is working. It kind of gets into, the realm of burnout. I was talking about burnout recently, and, one of these components of burnout is just feeling kind of helpless, that nothing you're doing is working.
Right. Right.
And so it's easy to get into those spirals. And just, I was feeling good on Wednesday this week when I met with my coach. So I have a coach that I meet with every 2 weeks, and it was in our meeting 2 weeks ago. I was like, Tammy, I'm just in a horrible space. I'm just really down. I've got to turn this around. And so we really examined my mindset and where my head was at. And
Mhm.
it was definitely in a place that I don't normally let myself go. And so we, set some things in motion in that session 2 weeks prior around just really getting my head on straight, thinking about, dismissing these kind of negative thoughts and the things that I let myself ruminate on negatively, and getting myself in a positive place. And I would say that this is the time in my life when I've had to be so intentional about, getting up every morning and going for a walk, just because that's one of the things that gets me in a good headspace for the day.
Right.
It's the
Right.
physical activity, it's getting outside, it's the sunshine. Um, and so I've never had to put so much maintenance into my mental health as this current period in running my business.
Right.
So, um, but I think the success of it is in the near term is that I recognize it and I'm
Mhm.
working through it.
Yeah.
And I'm still here.
Yeah. So I hear this from a lot of people who work for themselves. I also hear it from business leaders as well. Is when they're trying to move forward, they're trying to do something different, they're launching a new program, they're launching a new project at work, and just that mindset, what we say to ourselves as we're moving forward and wondering, is this even going to work? This new innovative idea, is it going to work? Is my new business that I'm working on going to work? Is this new program I launched going to work? And I always think of it, and I had the same conversation with my coach this week, is that we plant seeds and we cultivate and we work on the soil and we work on watering and we do all of these things. And then you feel like you're in that cultivation system forever. It might be a year and a half, 2 years, but it feels like you're there forever. And then finally you start seeing little sprouts come up. And then you get excited, right? But you have to still water it and take care of it and keep it going, all those important things. But your mindset is so valuable in how you look at that. Otherwise, it'd be really easy to just walk away, right? And just say, phooey, I can't do this. This is too hard. This is too much. And I love how you're supporting yourself with exercise, just simple walking to, or whatever it may take that morning. For some people, it's a cup of coffee. For other people, it's physical exercise. It's whatever, inspirational reading, meditation. There are a variety of things that people can do to get their mindset in the right place. Or if their mindset gets off, to put it back in a good place again. So I love that yours is walking. I imagine you walking around the lake in Chicago. Are you still living there?
Well, so I don't live on the lakefront anymore. I live about a
Oh,
mile
okay.
in. What's weird though is I have a route that I take every morning,
Uh-huh.
and I don't like to deviate from it. I walk the exact same route every morning, which is I think it's unlike me because I generally value novelty.
Uh-huh.
But for this practice, my morning walk practice, I think it's the same walk every day because then it can be more meditative.
Exactly.
Like I'm not distracted by newness.
Mm-hmm.
Um, or it's meditative in I can appreciate the subtle changes on the route.
Right.
And so, I can think about one house in particular. It's for anybody who's familiar with the Andersonville neighborhood in Chicago, where I live, there's this one house, and you either call it the Unicorn House or the Pride House. And they decorate their house for Pride every year. And then they've got this unicorn out front. And so they change with the seasons. And so it's just always a delight every time they shift the decor out front of the house. Um, that I get to walk by, and maybe I just walk for that house. I don't know, but it is interesting how normally I seek novelty, but in that practice, I like the sameness.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I love everything that you've shared today, the goals, how you've reached those goals. I love the fact of how you support yourself in your mindset, how you're looking at moving forward in your own business and recognizing what those challenges might be, and trying to find resources and support for your own self as you move forward. So I love that. I think that speaks highly to the wisdom and the experience that you've had going all along, because you knew you had to do that, right? You knew you had to reach out. You knew you had to be vulnerable with your coach. You knew you had to have those resources to support you. So I'm a big fan of coaching, by the way. I don't know how anybody gets to upper level management or moving their business forward without a coach, because we can easily get in our own way, right?
Yes, I think I find my coach so valuable, and even if sometimes it's hey, I'm actually in a good headspace today. I'm feeling good. I need to brainstorm with you on something
Mm-hmm.
because as someone who has a preference for extroversion, I need to think out loud. And so, to be able to do that with my coach is helpful. Um, and I do think it requires a lot of vulnerability with yourself and self-awareness. Because I've worked with coaching clients as a coach who they struggle with, they thought they were coming to a coach for advice and just to tell them what to do. Like, no, 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 that's not my job. My job is to help you find that new path. And they struggle because they don't want to be vulnerable or dig into self-awareness to get there. And so I think that's, when people have those struggles, that's a good place to start.
Right, right. I think you bring up a good point, because I think one of the key aspects and key important aspects of being a great leader is being willing to be vulnerable, and vulnerable with
Mhm,
yourself to see reality, and vulnerable
mhm.
with others takes tremendous amount of courage, and yet is so powerful in making things happen, and getting obstacles and self-sabotage out of the way. I mean, it's phenomenal. Just allowing yourself that opportunity. It's an invitation to grow, you know. And so I think that's super important. Yeah. Anyway, well, thank you so much, Justin. I just love all these insights. I'm so glad you joined me this morning, and I look forward to hearing more from you. I actually am part of the Association of Talent Development here in the Houston area, and I think I'm going to hook you up with some of the people in our organization. I think you might want to maybe come and talk with us or share some of your ideas. I think that would be fantastic.
Yeah.
So yeah,
that would be great. That would be great.
About that. Yeah. So to all our listeners, thank you so much for joining us. Look forward to speaking with you again and sharing more wisdom and experience from the successful leaders in our country and around the world. I actually have someone coming from another country. So anyway, see you all later. Thank you again.